Afternoon, this is Mike here, and this is the next part of the tour around the Holyrood Canongate area of Edinburgh. I'm going to talk about some of the more modern parts of this park. And if we look across here at this building, in fact, if I take us further over here, this is the Scottish Parliament, and this was opened in 2004 by the Queen, and it is our devolved Parliament, which has powers over certain things, but not everything, which some of these powers are held on to by the Parliament or government in London at Westminster. And the architecture is by a Spanish architect who was called Enrique Morales, and you can maybe see some of the elements of Spanish architecture coming through in the work. I sometimes think of some of the kind of Art Nouveau type artists. So if we look over here, this Parliament has powers over health, education and housing, hence the powers that they have over the present COVID-19 situation. It does not have powers over immigration, the economy and defence, and at any point, if Westminster wished, they could actually limit the powers of Scotland and take them all back again. The Parliament building is modern. It didn't please everybody when it went up, and some people say you either like it or hate it. Many people think that Edinburgh, being a historic town, city, should have historic architecture, but we want to be a forward-looking country moving ahead. So if you look at the shapes on the windows, now I don't know if you're going to see this too easily, but the architect was inspired by this picture, and this is of the Reverend Walker skating on Duddingston Loch. Now that was not the sort of thing a minister of the Church of Scotland could be really expected to do back then in the 18th century, but he was an enlightened figure, so it's all to do with enlightened thought. But if you look at the shapes, the black shapes beside the window, it's said that Enrique Morales used this portrait of the Reverend Walker to inspire these strange shapes. Others say that the dark shapes there also are curtains or drapes pulled to the side to say we are a transparent Parliament, we're not hiding anything. We like to be forward-looking. There's 129 members of the Scottish Parliament sitting there in a circular, modern, kind of amphitheatre type arrangement, very different from the confrontational Parliament setting in Westminster. And the government is the Scottish Nationalist Party, headed by the First Minister, who is Nicola Sturgeon, and she's been in that post for 6 years, since 2014. The Parliament building is built in concrete. It's also built in 4 towers with the debating chamber in the centre, and it's faced with Kemnay granite, so a local Scottish stone, but it's got some Caithness sandstone in it as well, which breaks up the colours. If you look at the poles, like bamboo sticks, it was all also to do with transparency. The architect wanted you to see and enjoy the building behind the canopy, so didn't want it to be obscured. So these are not bamboo, they are actually oak, but it's paying homage to other cultures as well. It's seen as an international building. Now I'm going to have you look at these stone seats here, which are in the shape of boats or leaves, and the architect Enrique Morales paid a visit to Lindisfarne, and he saw boats which were all filled up with supplies, and it gave him the idea of mixing and matching and bringing in these sort of curved shapes, which could also be leaves, because he walked around Arthur's Seat, Holyrood Park, and was interested in the natural forms and branches and leaves that he picked up on the way. Now if you look at the water feature, the architect wanted a building which was very organic and flowing into the landscape, so you can see it's almost encroaching over there, over towards Holyrood Park, and it was a nice thought, and I like this building. I'm quite visual. I like modern architecture. Sometimes modern architecture is awful. It's very modular and boring, but I think this building, and especially in the inside, is a beautiful interior. So that's the Scottish Parliament. You can visit here, get guided tours by on-site guides who will tell you all about who sits where in the debating chamber. And it's kind of slowed down just now because of social distancing. So people are representing themselves and ideas through Zoom and through the media rather than being there in person some of the time. And you can see the Gaelic naming of this Parliament also there. And that's the visitors' entrance. Now when the Parliament's in session, or when the MSPs are here, you will see police, armed police. Armed police are very unusual in Scotland. It's not customary for them to carry guns, but because this is a parliamentary building for security, they have to do so. But if you look also at the building again, at the granite facing on the right hand side, you'll see the grasses and natural shapes that the architect was actually including in the design of this building. So he was wanting it to complement the surroundings round about. But once again, very controversial. Many people would have wanted a very overbearing, classical Greek Roman style building. I love these buildings of the new town, but I just think, why? Why go back? You need to go forward, you need to move forward. Okay. Well, this was the park where King David went out hunting, and it used to be forested, but James V and Mary Queen of Scots, in their time, they decided to cut down the trees because there was a lot of building and they needed wood for various other reasons, expanding the town, the old town. So it became a bit bare, and today it is a place of special scientific interest. Arthur's Seat, which you can't actually see, which many people come and climb up to, is 822 feet high. It's not a huge climb, 250 metres high, and from there you can get some of the most panoramic, wonderful views of Edinburgh. Salisbury Crags, up on the right hand side. It's all volcanic, going back 350 million years ago when Edinburgh was having 7 volcanic vents, and Arthur's Seat was one of them. And this uplift in the landscape, you can't see much of it today, has got a road going up called the Radical Road, and that was sponsored by Sir Walter Scott to help the unemployed weavers. Previous to the building of the Scottish Parliament, there was gasworks here. There was brewing of beer going in here. William Younger Brewery was located around here. And we turn out in all weathers, Joe and I. And I was thinking another description of us would be tour masters. We're like superheroes. We go out in all conditions. So I want you to cast your eye over here. This building is called Our Dynamic Earth, and it was part of the Millennium Project, and it gained money from the Heritage Lottery Fund to build it on the site of Younger's Brewery. And the site was gifted by the brewery for an engaging attraction to educate people into the geology and landscape and history of this beautiful part of Edinburgh. And it was designed by a company who designed the Velodrome in London for the London Olympics, as well as Lord's Cricket Ground Stadium. So you can maybe see some similarities in the steel bars which are stretched over, and the fabric on top of it is got to kind of give, the architects wanted to give an open view, a semi-open view. So when you were inside, you felt you were outside. So it's, I think I like it. I do like it. It's a nice building. And here it commemorates one of our great enlightened figures called James Hutton, 18th century a geologist. He decided by looking at the landscape around Edinburgh that he could date how old the planet was, and he wrote up a book called The Theory of the Earth, and he was able to date the planet going back billions of years. And today we know the planet's about 4.5 or 4.4 billion years old, but he upset many people because back then in the 18th century many people would have dated it with being about thousands of years old. so he did upset people. He was digging out their little bits in around Salisbury Crags and hammering away with his hammer and discovering a junction of formations where you get the younger sedimentary rock and the older volcanic rock, and where the older volcanic rock had penetrated the younger rock and laid on top, and these things were called unconformities. So he was a big leader in the Enlightenment, James Hutton, and today we've got some of the oldest landscape in the world. In fact, people come from Australia, which has got some of the very ancient geology, and they come and study the Scottish geology, because up on the Northwest Highlands, I think Joe's going up there on holiday, the Hebrides, there are rocks there about 3 billion years old called Lewisian gneiss. And so there you go. What a country this is, Scotland. I call it a big wee country. We're quite small, but we've got an amazing history even in the landscape. So we're moving towards the Holyrood area, just beside the Parliament on the right hand side. Dynamic Earth is an attraction where you can go, interactive attraction. You can feel how a earthquake feels if you're not in an area that gets earthquakes. You can touch an iceberg, you can go on a fly through in a 360 degree cinema theatre. So it's very hands-on. So there it is, our Dynamic Earth. It's closed just now because of our situation. We're easing out of lockdown, but it remains closed just now. But they used to make glass down here as well, and there used to be tanneries, so it was quite a smelly industrial part of town, the Canongate. But today it's been tweaked, not so much the Canongate, but Holyrood rather, with wonderful boutique hotels and smart restaurants, and yeah, it's been sort of brought up from what it was before. You're just going to wait in the red light here, and we're going to cross over, but if maybe Joe could take a wee glimpse up the side, you'll see the meditation pods. These little bamboo shapes in front of the windows, these are where the members of the Scottish Parliament go to think about good government. And we can decide whether we think they're making a good job of it or not, but it's quite a relaxing idea to have these meditation pods up the side there. So I'm going to walk up. On the left hand side is the entry to Holyrood Park for vehicles. And if you're wondering what this coat is I'm wearing, it's called an Inverness cape. And it's absolutely the best deal today, I'll tell you, in the rain. It keeps you so dry. So it's good for wearing with a kilt as well. The hotels are gradually opening just now. I've stayed here, I've done a few tours where the guide is actually stays with the clients, and I've stayed in this hotel. It's a nice hotel. Quiet just now. We're generally getting back. There is the tourist industry is beginning to open up, but I want us to look at this sculpture. Up here on the wall, this relief panel. Now, there used to be a glassworks here called the Flint Glassworks, because it was owned by a man called Flint, and he had a foothold in another glassworks on the other side of the Canongate called the Caledonian Glass House, because they used to call glassworks glass houses back then. And it was very active in the 18th and 19th century, and he took over this bit here where there was another glassworks. And if you see the man sitting at his machinery, he is actually in the process of glass cutting. And it's a commemorative panel which was off a tenement building, and there were several of these after the glass making had moved away out from here, just to remind us that this was what was here before. So Edinburgh was known for high quality glass and crystal, being quite a dark, I shouldn't say this is, I'm not putting Scotland down, but having a fairly dark climate. we needed all the light we could get. So Edinburgh's new town, when it was built, had to have wonderful cupolas and a lot of glass and beautiful fan lights. So the glassmakers were kept very busy. The glassmaking still exists again in Edinburgh today, but not at the same scale as it used to be, so a part of Edinburgh's industrial past. So that other glassworks on the north side of the Cannon Gate, which Joe guided you down, used to make Jacobite. Now this might be interesting to Outlander fans. Jacobite fluted glasses and the air twisted stems you're maybe familiar with, and wonderful engraved pattern work, and that was one of their main products back in the 18th century, the Caledonian glass house. You can see this building, see if I'm going to show you a visual aid. As you may expect if you've been watching videos, I always come out with a picture. I'm an artist, so I love visuals. I love to show people visuals. To show you this was the clock tower where it says Pizza Express of the brewery building, because the Holyrood brewery used to be here. And if I could let you have a wee look at this old engraving, you can see this was the brewery building. It's all in the area of the Scottish Parliament. This goes back to the 19th century, an open area for the storage of beer barrels and so on, chimney, very industrial. So it has been changed from industrial to be the hospitality sector, and as you can see, this used to be a clock tower. But if you look above Pizza Express, you'll see what's a perspex circle with numerals on it. That was nothing like the original clock that used to be there. It was what you would expect as an industrial clock, rather. So it's good that they paid homage, a gesture, if you like, to the industrial past of Edinburgh. So we're walking up this wee street. Now on the right hand side is BBC Scotland. This is the British Broadcasting Company, and a lot of the newsworthy programmes will be made here in the studio above. We have news coverage of the Scottish Parliament as well, so it's quite good that they're located quite close. And if you look down, you've got BBC Alba also, which is the Gaelic channel. On the left-hand side is where the Scottish Youth Parliament is. Now, Scotland's a very progressive country, and the Scottish Youth Parliament was founded in the early 1990s, and it is a cooperative grouping of young people who liaise very much with similar European organisations. It became the Youth Parliament in 1999, even before the Scottish Parliament was introduced, because it saw that the interests of the youth were very, very important. And today, Scotland has reduced the voting age from 18 to 16. So would you believe you can register to vote at the age of 14, although you can't physically vote? So we would have liked Westminster to introduce that legislation, but they will not have it. So you still have to be 18 years of age if you're voting in a Westminster UK parliamentary election, but here you can be 16 if you're voting for the Scottish Parliament. You can even be an MSP at the age of 16, a member of the Scottish Parliament. So I just think that's fantastic. We are coming to the Scottish Poetry Library. On the right hand side, this blue tiled building. Now, it has come very close to winning the Channel 4 Building of the Year in competition. It's seen as very successful. It's been described as a poem in glass and stone, and it holds 30,000 examples of poetry, both Scottish and internationally. So a bit of a hidden gem. It's not everybody that will come down here, but if you're in Edinburgh, you might like to pop in. Apart from anything else, it's a wonderful building. It's actually integrated into the more industrial. If you look further down here, this is called the Tun, and this is where BBC Scotland have located their studios here, TUN, and it was part of the brewery buildings in the brewing of beer here. So we're going to keep moving a wee bit. Now you may recognise Starbucks, the US Embassy, as described by Joe earlier. We've done a bit of a loop, and we're going to just continue a little bit further up. So this is the Cannon Gate again, where we started our tour. If you look over to the right, you will see the Cannon Gate Church, the Mercat Cross of the Cannon Gate, which was a symbol of authority by the monarch or whoever ran this area to trade. Well, you see Robert Ferguson, that statue we looked at earlier. It's another tradition. If you come and rub Greyfriars Bobby's nose, the next thing you would probably do is rub David Hume's toe, and then you would come down here and you would rub Robert Ferguson's shoe. And if you look closely, it's very shiny. Okay, we're going to go down Bakehouse Close. The Bakehouse Close is just what you would imagine. Used to be bakeries here, again further developed in the 19th century into an industrial area. This building here was used in Outlander, and I think it was series 3, where Claire comes back and discovers Jamie. She's time travelling. And this stair leads up to Jamie's print shop, and this is much visited by Outlander fans because this street is relatively untouched. And if you look around, there's a 17th century building here called Aitchison House, and it was occupied by one man, Archibald Aitchison. If you look at the ones here with the pediments on top of the windows, the kind of triangular tops. This house is 17th century, and it was occupied by the Secretary of State for Scotland, who was Archibald Aitchison, and he was Secretary of State of Scotland to Charles I. So he was quite a powerful man. He was quite a wealthy man, able to build a house like this here. But unfortunately, as was the case often, these people didn't survive to see the completed building. It's in an L shape, and it has been restored just now, hence the scaffolding. But in normal times, you can actually walk through the door and have a little look through. I'm just going to have a little look, but I'm sure this is closed. But I'm just going to have a quick look, be a bit naughty and try and open the door, but it's probably locked. Yeah, it's locked. It's worth a try though. So, Aitchison House, and it went through various transformations in its history. It was a brothel at one point. In fact, in Outlander, he stays in a brothel, Jamie does, and they filmed the door of this building as him exiting the brothel and entering the brothel, and the outside door was used so many times in different parts of that of the filming. If I turn you around here, there's some older buildings here which actually go back to the 16th century. The Museum of Edinburgh, in fact, is there. And you can learn a lot about Edinburgh's history in there also.